Hello and welcome to our Let's Be Neighbors tonight for our new series of On the Front Lines. And we are so delighted to have you guys with us. We are opening up with a very important topic of the conflict and invasion of Ukraine and about how to help globally. With us tonight, we have four fantastic presenters talking about different aspects of the war in Ukraine. And so we have first Anna Pechenkina. I hope I said that right. Yes, okay. And she is an associate professor at USU on political science. She is an assistant professor in the political science department at Utah State University. She has received her PhD in political science in 2013 at Pennsylvania State University. Dr. Pechenkina's research focuses on bargaining obstacles to peace, and she studies how situations of war transform into peace. And she will be giving us the history of Ukraine and how a positive resolution may come about. Next, after Dr. Pechenkina, we are going to be hearing from David Christensen. He earned his master's degree from the University of Utah in 2019 in social work and has as a therapist at Youth Services since 2011. David has extensive experience working with at-risk and delinquent youth at various levels of the child welfare and criminal justice system. David currently provides therapeutic services in mental health and substance abuse treatment at the West Jordan location of Salt Lake County. He's a certified clinical trauma professional and has had training in various therapeutic modalities. And he will be speaking to us on how to talk to children about war of varying ages and how we can respond in positive ways as well when traumatic events happen. And then finally, we are very honored and delighted to have two presenters from the Utah Ukrainian Association. Ivan Bagmet is a Utah Ukrainian Association board member, Utah resident, and he was born in Ukraine in the city of Donetsk. I hope I got that right. And then finally, we have Yevgen Kovalov. He's originally from Kiev. Oh no, I got some audio here. I'm not sure if you hear me on my end, but he's been in Utah from 2007 with short breaks. During the time, he was back in Kiev in 2011 and is currently an attorney and is also the director of the Utah Ukrainian Association. He is going to be speaking about, or they are both going to be talking about how best to help Ukraine, our global neighbors during this time. And so with that, we're going to go straight to Dr. Pechenkina and we will get started. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Could you please remind me the amount of time that we have set? I just want to make sure that I don't exceed. Is it 15 or 20 minutes?
10? We have 20 minutes. I'll give you an 18-minute, a couple minute warnings at the 18-minute mark.
Great. Okay. Thank you. All right. Let me start with sharing my slides here. All right. I'm assuming everyone can see them. Okay. All right, so I'd like to start. I'm not gonna go back into centuries ago, but I do want to start kind of giving you a quick overview of the watershed year of 2014, which truly was the first year of Russian aggression against Ukraine and how it has shaped the country. So if you take a look at the bottom left of this map, you will see that Ukraine is positioned, it's a Texas-sized territory positioned in Eastern Europe, and it's bordering on Russia on the east, Turkey in the south, and Romania and Poland in the west, and Belarus in the north. So here you see the map, which is visualizing the data from the 2001 census. So I mentioned that Ukraine is a Texas-sized territory, so it's a large country. Before it lost control over Crimea, it was the largest country in Europe. Currently, France is technically larger. But in addition to that, it's a country with the population about 44 million people. We cannot say for sure because the last official census was in 2001, but the current estimates are before the war, before this mass migration out of the country, between 40 and 44 million people. So it's a large nation. And in this map, you see that this map is visualizing the distribution of individuals who identified as native Russian speakers. This is a specific type of identity where many more people in Ukraine use Russian language, mainly because as a legacy of the former Soviet Union, Russian is spoken quite widely. But identifying Russian as a native language is different, right? So a lot of people use Russian or used to use Russian in everyday life, but then fewer would say that that's their native language. And so here you can see that if we kind of visualize this distribution at 30% and higher in the bluer colors, then the country is almost evenly split between, or I should say used to be, right? So all I'm saying right now is before 2014, that watershed year. So the country used to be almost evenly split between southeastern part of Ukraine and center-western part of Ukraine. And remarkably, this identity as a native Russian speaker used to predict almost perfectly the electoral maps of all presidential elections until 2014. So I'm not going to bore you with all presidential elections between the year when Ukraine achieved independence in 1991 from the Soviet Union and 2010, which was the last presidential election before the Revolution of Dignity and before the annexation of Crimea in 2014. But just trust me that all of those elections looked very much similar to this. And so if we take a look at the political spectrum of Ukrainian political parties and presidential candidates before 2014, we can collapse the entire political space into a single dimension, which is quite common for many countries. So Israel, for instance, has a single dimension. You can kind of plot all the parties on the Palestinian issue. And that will be the main dimension. In Ukrainian politics until 2014, the main dimension used to be integration with the West or integration with the East. And in different elections, this was framed sometimes differently. For instance, at one point it was framed as language rights, and then at another point it was framed as a greater trade integration with the European Union, or as opposed to, with the Eurasian Commission. But the gist is the same, that it's a foreign policy vector of development. And the question is whether Ukraine should be kind of at least one set of candidates and one set of parties would always advocate for greater Western integration, and another set of candidates and parties would always advocate for greater pro-Russian integration. So before 2014, you can see that in that specific election, just like almost all elections before then, by just a hair-thin margin, the pro-Russian candidate won. And here, these are the territories that you can see are almost perfectly mapping on the distribution of native Russian speakers, right? So that southeastern voting bloc used to be a very distinctive feature of Ukrainian politics, where the country was one of the most polarized developing democracies, and there were always these two competing narratives and kind of two potential models of Ukraine's development. Then everything changes in 2014. This is truly the watershed moment in Ukraine's history. So you can see already that this is only May 2014, but by May of that year, Russia already annexed Crimea. So the first round of Russia's aggression against Ukraine has started. And at this moment in time, in May 2014, Russia is already starting to sponsor anti-Ukraine protests and insurgent movement, and is actively instigating the separatist conflict, which will later be known as the Donbas War, which lasted for a year and 2 months as the intense phase, and then for 8 years after that, it was in the low intensity phase. And so here, this map is remarkable because you can see that that division between southeastern Ukraine and central-western Ukraine is gone. It's no longer present. And in addition to that, you can also see that the Crimean Peninsula in the south and then the southern regions of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions are no longer participating in the election because they're no longer de facto controlled by Ukraine. So that act of aggression from Russia in 2014 has consolidated Ukrainian society. So here you have some voting for the pro-Russian party, but we don't see that split, right, between the two parts of the country. That is gone. Furthermore, the consolidation of Ukraine has persisted into the future. In 2019, the Donbas war has already been a frozen conflict or a low-intensity conflict for 8 years. And here you see that the president that is currently in office, Volodymyr Zelensky, he's a Russian speaker. He's from the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine, and normally, kind of before 2014, a candidate like that could really expect a lot of support in southeastern Ukraine, and you do see that the darker areas do signify greater preference for Zelensky. But then the remarkable thing is that Ukrainian society is no longer split in half. It is consolidated. So he is getting majorities even in the center western parts of Ukraine, and his opponent is only getting majorities in just one oblast, the Lviv oblast of the westmost region of Ukraine. So that's the big picture, that in 2014, the initial round of Russia's aggression against Ukraine has completely reshaped Ukraine, has consolidated Ukraine. Furthermore, the Eastern versus Western vector of development is no longer the political spectrum, the issue on which political parties are differentiating themselves. That issue has been solved. And for instance, in 2019, both candidates who were running for president, they were in complete agreement that Ukraine should be integrating with the West, that it should become the member of the European Union, NATO, and kind of the Eastern vector of development is no longer an option, or is no longer like a viable option that has the support, the vast support of the half of the population. So my main message here is that the annexation of Crimea and the instigation of the war in Donbass that happened in 2014 is what led to consolidation of Ukrainian society. And remarkably, it was exactly the opposite of what Vladimir Putin was trying to achieve with his policies. So it was like the most counterproductive foreign policy you can imagine. And so I would like to now, so kind of after this initial introduction, let me now quickly overview why we see this aggression today and why this is such a massive miscalculation and is a really bad decision on Russia's behalf. And if we have time, we'll also talk about what the potential settlements may look like here. So another way to look at the story that I just conveyed to you in electoral maps is to take a look at the approval of Russia among Ukrainians as surveyed by the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology. And so here you can see that until 2013, the November of 2013, when the protests erupted, which led to the pro-Russian president of Ukraine fleeing the country. So Russians love to say that it was a coup. It was not a coup. For a coup in political science terms, you need to remove the executive from office, right? So somehow the executive has to be constrained and removed from office. Here, the executive fled the country. So technically, it was not a coup. And you can see that the approval of Russia was very high until then, between 90 and 80%. So even though obviously there are some regional differences here, still on average, this is very high approval. Then everything changes, and this is what we call the Great Divorce between Russia and Ukraine in 2014, where the pro-Russian candidate, the pro-Russian president flees the country. The less moderate than normal interim government is in charge. They entertained the idea of reviewing the long-term lease of the Sevastopol military base in the Black Sea. So the lease was signed between Russia and Ukraine into 2042, into the future, until 2042. And the interim government, in a couple of interviews, some of the representatives made the comments that, well, that's not in the interest of Ukraine, let's reconsider. And that's when we see the seizure of Crimea, the annexation of Crimea. So, and then, of course, the public opinion drops further as Russia keeps instigating the Donbas war, right? And then public opinion never recovers after that, right? You can see that there's somewhat of a recovery a little bit after many years of kind of the Donbas war becomes a frozen conflict, but we are never back to the initial, right, 90 in kind of approval ratings of in the 90s or 80s. And you can only imagine where this orange line is right now, right? It's going to take many, many generations to recover from this awful blunder by the Russian Federation. So the big message here is that when states fear the future, they sometimes act using military means to arrest the fleeting favorable status quo. And so Russian leadership often makes a point that the speed with which Ukrainian society is rushing to join the EU and NATO, they view this as a threat. So let me just explain how what they're doing is actually instigating the Ukrainian society, consolidating around the idea of joining NATO. So before the annexation of Crimea, as you can see, so these data are from December 2014, so just a month before the annexation of Crimea. Only 34% of Ukrainians would vote in favor of joining NATO. Furthermore, the plurality, 44%, would vote against, right? And then there were big chunks of not knowing. Now let's take a look at the data from December 2021. So right, just 2 months before the current invasion. So here, sorry, I don't have the English translation, but it's the same survey firm. And you see that the chunk of the population in favor of joining NATO is almost 60%. So we go from 34% to 60%, right? So this unfavorable shift in power that Putin is claiming he's trying to stall, it's actually a response to his own policy of aggression in 2014. In 2019, it is true that what happened in Ukraine after 2014, this consolidation of public opinion around the idea of joining Western institutions and integrating with the West, has created difficulty for the Ukrainian leadership to even put on the table not becoming the member of NATO. So it became such a popular idea inside Ukraine that the former President Poroshenko, in a populist decision, trying to win the re-election, which did not work, he was trying to mobilize population based on passing the amendment in which kind of currently it's in the language of Ukraine's constitution that the country intends to join NATO and the EU. And so the problem here is that in response to Putin's aggression, no government of Ukraine could seriously could make offers to Russia about Ukraine's neutrality status. And again, that's all in response to Russia's aggression, right? So in a sense, kind of this is the most counterproductive foreign policy one can imagine. And now let's think about the short-term changes that happened more recently. So the Minsk II agreement that was signed to settle the Donbas war was kind of signed in a way that was incredibly favorable to Russia. And so there was no way that any government, not just Zelenskys government, but any government could implement that agreement and stay in power, because it basically demanded that the Ukrainian government would accept the results of local elections in these rebel-held enclaves in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. And that would have led to de facto granting Russia a veto over Ukraine's foreign policy because these enclaves would have the special status in the constitution. So it was a no-go. Zelensky, his entire presidency, tried to renegotiate the agreement, and of course, Russians would not budge. And so after he abandoned that agreement, that was a clear sign to Russians that even he, that was a real shift in policy, right? That kind of that slippage into the West was now being sped up. Finally, Ukraine has started to receive en masse shipments of weapons after 2018. So the first Trump impeachment is directly related to this. And that, of course, makes any war with Ukraine less costly today than it would be in the future, right? So that also could be a contributing factor. And then finally, the short-term changes in Zelensky's policy. So this is what led to the initial spout of mobilization by Russia in 2021, because that mobilization and military exercises that really lasted the entire year before the invasion just a month ago. So one of the oligarchs in Ukraine is a personal friend and supposedly is a godfather to one of Putin's daughters. He owned 3 Russian-speaking channels who were that were really just kind of spouting Russian propaganda in Ukraine. And so Zelensky's policy, was a 180 turnaround after he abandoned the Minsk agreement, which Russians refused to negotiate. So Medvedchuk was placed under house arrest, including his financial assets being arrested. And then the 3 these TV channels were shut down, and that was viewed as a huge rebuke in Russia. And then finally, there was a huge uncertainty over German.
2-minute warning, Anna.
Thank you. There was a huge uncertainty over German response in terms of in September 2021, the CDU, which is for the party of Angela Merkel, was the first election result where it was no longer in the ruling coalition. And that, of course, was a kind of a very suggestive result in terms of kind of that Germany would not join any sort of European sanctions. I mean, we see that it was a miscalculation. It's remarkable that CDU was able to pressure Chancellor Scholz, and eventually he joined, even after the initial few days of hesitation. So the unified Western response has been remarkable, but it has been unexpected, and that uncertainty probably also contributed to why Putin moved in with this invasion. So let me stop here, and just to summarize that, what we see is the first round of Russia's aggression against Ukraine in 2014 is what explains the incredible consolidation of Ukrainian society and really underscores how counterproductive Russia's foreign policy is towards Ukraine. And then the current invasion is probably one of the greatest blunders in terms of foreign policy miscalculations in world history, mainly because that feels like the foreign intelligence services of Russia did not even pay attention to what was happening in Ukraine in the past 8 years. Like, it's enough to just look at the electoral maps of the country to see how much the country was transformed by the annexation of Crimea. And clearly, we have indirect evidence that they clearly believe that the southeastern Ukraine would roll over and would not resist at all, which seems just kind of delusional and kind of miscalculation at the highest level. All right, thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions.
Hello. Okay, thank you so much, Anna. That was fantastic and a lot of information to absorb. So if you have any questions further on that, feel free to put them in the chat and we will get to them in our Q&A portion. But we are going to transition over now to David Christensen for his presentation on talking about war with children, or difficult topics in general. And take it away, David. See if I can, actually I need to give you presenter power. So here, there you go. Okay, now you can take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anna. Very informative. So I'm David Christensen, and I represent Salt Lake County Youth Services. And we have many no-cost services for residents of Salt Lake County. Probably the most relevant this evening is we offer no-cost short-term therapy to youth and families who reside within Salt Lake County, and we also offer no-cost longer-term therapy services for those who qualify financially. So unfortunately, we're talking about war today, not a very fun topic. But wars probably existed as long as people have. And at the end of 2021, there was close to 30 armed conflicts going on. Fortunately, deaths as a result of war have gone down overall since World War II. And regardless of age, everyone can probably think of several conflicts or wars in their lifetime. I'd like you to think back to your first memory of war. Excuse me. For me, that was 7th grade. I grew up in Southern California. And I remember being at a park. We were playing roller hockey with some friends, and one of my friends' dads came to the park and said that we had gone to war in the Middle East. And I remember being confused. I had obviously learned about war in school and from parents and grandparents and whatnot, but this was the first time that I had been directly affected by it. Our country was at war. And so people are going to have different reactions to war. And some of those factors might be history with war. Veterans obviously are going to have a different reaction to war than non-veterans, having that firsthand personal experience. Age and developmental level, if we think about kids versus adults, they're going to have very different understandings and perhaps very different reactions. Connection to the conflict can also be something that affects our reaction to war. Knowing someone in the battle, right? Having those worries and concerns that they may not come home is going to affect us. And so bottom line is war can be really confusing for kids. And so when we're talking to kids about war, we need to make sure that we're considering age, developmental level, and prior knowledge about war. And so UNICEF, the Children's Humanitarian Aid Society, recommends 8 steps. And they're finding out what the kids know about war and how they feel, keeping it calm and age appropriate, spreading compassion, not stigma, focus on the helpers, always closing conversations with care, continuing to check in, limiting the flood of news, and taking care of yourself. And so we're going to break this down into different age groups and talk a little bit about how these 8 principles can apply to different age groups. So when we're thinking about preschoolers and younger, they're not really likely to have a lot of information about war and probably not really exposed to information about war. And so if they're not specifically asking, there's really no need to give information to this age group. But if they do ask, we want to give just very basic information. Might explain that war is when groups of people don't get along and they fight with each other. And then if they express fear, we just want to reassure them, this is taking place really far away, we're safe here. This isn't really something that we need to be worrying about, right? Just really reassuring them. Think about the kindergarten to age 8. That takes us right up to about 2nd grade or so. And kids in this age group are really curious and they're wanting to understand their world around them. And often they can understand what conflict is. But similar to the younger age group, often they won't be exposed to information about war and may not know that there is a war going on. So again, we don't want to bring up war and expose them to information that they're not developmentally ready for unless they ask. And if you're curious or concerned that maybe they do know something and want to have that discussion with them, you can ask some probing questions like, what have you been learning about in school? Has anything worried you lately? And then if they bring it up, certainly you can answer some questions. And if if they do, we definitely want to keep it basic. So my daughter is 8, and I asked her what she knew about war, and she said that it's when armies fight against each other. And so I asked if anybody is at war right now, and she said no. And then she thought about it for a second, and she said that France and China were at war. I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. What are they fighting about? And she said chocolate. And so if that's where kids are at developmentally, we want to leave them there, right? We want to leave them in that bliss that, you know, people have fights about chocolate. But thinking about it, I mean, if there was anything worth fighting for, I mean, chocolate's got to be probably one of them. And so really, we don't want to overwhelm them, and we want to find out what they know. And you know, validating and empathizing is important, really with any age. Let them know that even adults get worried about war. Right, so giving them basic information like, you know, one country is trying to be the boss of another country. And then we can add a value statement, something that's going to be consistent with your family values. Right? We can let them know that, you know, fighting is never the answer to solving our problems. Or in our family, we talk about problems instead of fighting. And so this way you're giving them information, you're giving them understanding about what war is, what's happening, but then you're also teaching them a valuable lesson about how you want them to handle conflict. And we can let them know that we, you know, care about them and are concerned, and that they can come to us if they have any questions. So if anything pops up, they know where to come for answers. Ages 9 to 12, there's a pretty good chance that they will have heard something by this time. And so again, we want to know what they know, and we can start to give a little bit of information about what's happening, right? So we can just say that, you know, one country is trying to take over another country by fighting. And this age, they start to understand a lot more about feelings, and so we want to start asking feelings-based questions, you know, getting to really how this is making them feel, so that we know whether we need to reassure them or not. And you know, looking at past things here, one thing that we definitely want to do is instill compassion in them. Help them to understand that we definitely don't want to treat people poorly in our country based on what's happening in other countries. And we've certainly seen that with other things that have gone on in our country. Minorities or certain racial groups have been targeted or impacted negatively because of things that are happening in other countries. And so we want to make sure that we're teaching that lesson to our young people. So teens, junior high school and high school, much better able to critically think, have their own opinions, and make value judgments. And of course, this is compared to younger age groups, you know, compared to adults. I think thinking critically is kind of a joke. You know, we've all, if you've worked or, you know, talked to a teenager, I think there's a lot of lack of critically thinking, right? But compared to younger groups, definitely, they're in a much better space to think about this differently. Definitely can open up the dialogue a little bit more, get their take on it, ask their opinions, what they think. And a lot of teens, well, pretty much all teens are on social media, and so they're going to have a lot of exposure in a lot of different ways. And so we may need to correct misconceptions. We may need to educate them on where to get news, right? Facebook may not be the best place to get all of our news. And depending on their reaction to war and how they're feeling, we may need to limit access or set some sort of schedule on when they can get access to it. You know, perhaps right before bedtime is not the best time if they're really worried about this to be looking into it or getting information about it. So war can really create complex reactions. So coping is really important for dealing with strong emotions. And in order to deal with emotions, we really have to recognize them. And so adults are going to really be a key part of helping children to understand emotions. And so online, you can find little smiley face charts like this. And you can go over, you know, different emotions and what their understanding is. because if we have a better understanding of what emotions are, then we're going to be able to better match them to coping skills, because not all coping skills are going to match up well with all emotions. So in talking with kids, we want to make sure that they understand how to recognize emotions. And so there's 3 steps to do that. We want to pay attention to thoughts, body feelings, or sensations and behaviors. We want to make sure and match that up with what happened. And then the 3rd step is we want to name the emotion. So we're going to break this down and talk about each of these steps. And so if you think about being sick, when you're sick, it brings a set of symptoms along with it. And, those might be runny nose, fever, reduced energy, etc. And so emotions also brings a set of symptoms, and those symptoms are going to be the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviors. And so, you want to teach them that thoughts are the words or the ideas in our head, right? And they're going to be consistent with our emotions. That's why thoughts are so helpful in understanding our emotions, because if we have angry feelings, they're going to line up with our thoughts. And so if I'm angry with someone, I'm likely not thinking about how much I want to hug them and go out to lunch with them or something, right? And so feelings are going to be in line with our thinking. So our body feelings or body sensations is how our body feels. Kids often get this confused with emotions. So when I'm working with kids and I ask them, how are you, how does it feel inside of your body? They often will state what the emotion is rather than what they're actually feeling. And so, anger would be the emotion example, and then the body feeling would be, my heart's racing right now. And so if we really think about it, the emotion name, like anger, is really just a set of letters assigned to represent a set of symptoms. Each emotion, so each emotion is going to have a set of symptoms that go along with it, right? So we want to focus on the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviors. And so body awareness is really important. I think we've had probably the experience of where things are going along fine, and then they're not all of a sudden, right? And that's likely because we're tuning out a lot of the warning signs, right? And if we think about the things that we tune out in our everyday lives, like we tune out the feeling of having clothes on our body, of having shoes on our feet, or tuning out noises. And so when we tune in, then we start to notice things that we were tuning out. So we could ask ourselves questions like, do I feel tension? Is my stomach tight? Am I feeling hot or cold? And so different emotions are going to bring reactions to our body, right? So worry might bring a tight feeling. Anger might cause our heart to race. Embarrassment might make us feel warm. And then we have behaviors, right? They're all going to be indicative that something's going on, right? Slamming the door says something. Isolation, closing myself in my room says something. Asking a lot of questions. Complaining about your body not feeling well. Smiles and laughter. Those are all going to be things that are telling me something about how I'm feeling. And so as parents and adults, we can help kids to recognize what these signs are: the thoughts, the body feelings, the behaviors. Obviously, we can't read minds, but we can listen to what they're saying, right? And that's indicative of what their thoughts are. We can take note of if they're complaining about their bodies, right? I'm feeling, sick, or my stomach hurts, right? We can help them tune in to their body feelings that way. And last, we can watch for behaviors. So the second step in all of this, right? So first is paying attention to thoughts, body feelings, and behaviors. Second step is what happened to make me feel this way? If I can match up something that happened to the way I'm feeling, that can just be one extra piece in the puzzle of figuring out what emotion is I'm feeling. And then the last one is I want to name the emotion. Right? I want to match the emotions, and that helps me to match emotions to coping skills, right? So if I'm hungry, I can eat. If I'm cranky, I can sleep. If I'm angry, I can take a calming walk. If I'm excited, I can celebrate. Not all coping skills are going to match up with all emotions. And you might run into kids not wanting to cope or not knowing how. I've heard heard parents say that their kids say they hate coping skills, or they say that they refuse to do coping skills. And so we really want to explore options ahead of time. We're not going to do what is not comfortable to us. And so we want to make sure and practice them when the kids are calm. And it'd be really helpful to make a list and have it ready. So we've got some rules for coping skills, right? And number one is it has to work for me. So for me personally, I like running. It's a great coping skill for me, but if you don't like running and running is just a terrible thing, not only are you not going to do it, but even if you did, it's probably not going to be all that effective. So really for a coping skill to be a coping skill, for it to work for you, it has to be something that you enjoy, that you find peaceful.
Okay, David, we have 2 minutes left.
Okay, great, thanks. Second rule is it has to be appropriate for time and place. Swimming's a great one if you have access to a swimming pool, right? So we keep that as a coping skill, but we need to have a backup plan if that doesn't work. And the third one is can't hurt us or other people. I've got several here listed that are unhealthy coping skills, right? Cutting, smoking, drinking. We really want to encourage them to use healthy coping skills. And so kind of in conclusion here, we have some coping skills that we can educate kids on. There is a belly breathing video by Sesame Street. It's called Belly Breathe. It's Elmo. It's a fun little video that can teach breathing. You can use bubbles or pinwheels for younger kids. There's a website called Coping Skills for Kids where you can find some shape breathing for maybe elementary school kids. And older kids, high school age, junior high, and adults might use a controlled breathing technique where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold, breathe out for 8 seconds. Other things could be drawing, coloring, writing, journaling. These are particularly helpful if kids are having a hard time verbalizing how they're feeling. It's also great for when you don't have someone that you can talk to, or if what you're feeling like you want to share is too personal to share it with someone, you can write it down. Different movement activities that kids can do. And service is another good one that kids can get involved with. And getting personally involved can help them feel like they have more control over the situation. And so if you feel like your child's reaction, or you know someone whose reaction to war or other events is concerning, you're certainly invited to contact us at Salt Lake County Youth Services. And we can see if they'd benefit for some no-cost short-term therapeutic intervention. And there's our contact information there.
Thank you, David. That was awesome. We are running short on time, and we've got 2 extra presenters, and I want to give them both ample time. So we want to give it to Ivan and Yevgen. Do you know who's first? And I can make you guys presenter.
Yeah, I believe it should be me at this point.
All right, Ivan, then it is all for you, and you should have presenter powers given to you now.
Yeah, let me see if it's possible. Okay. So just give me like just one moment. Yevgen, can I ask you to go maybe first? Because it says, in order to share my stuff, I need to restart this connection.
Sure, let's do that. Well, thank you very much to Anna, Pechenkina, and David. And thank to everyone who's attending and interested in the topics that are discussed today. Our plan was for Ivan to kind of share the current status and what is happening right now on the ground in Ukraine and to refugees in Ukraine. And for me, it's kind of talk about a little bit about our association, what we're doing, how people can help here in Utah. So I will, Heather, may I share? Do you think I have permission?
Yes, you can. Bottom of the screen, there should be a button that says share, and you can pick your application.
Okay, let's. Okay. Well, so our association was established in 2015 formally, although we a group of Ukrainians gathered together in 2014 as a response to the revolution of integrity that Ms. Pechenkina talked about today. Let's see. So that what happened in 2014, we already covered that, but we here in Utah, as Ukrainians, gathered and kind of brainstorm how we can help, what we can do, and because of the conflicts that was happening in 2014, there were many children that lost their families, they lost their fathers, and could not provide for themselves, obviously. So we started to collecting donations. We started to working with organizations in Ukraine that help children of Ukrainian soldiers, fallen Ukrainian soldiers. So this you can see here. So we would normally either ran donation sites at our homes, and then would bring to storage and sort it out and deliver, ship to Ukraine. Normally it would be by sea. It took longer time, but it's cheaper, and that way we could focus on collecting things and more than on the logistics. Here on the, it's my right, you see our current president, Anna Baryshuk. Also, there are two other directors, Yulia Polko and myself, and Ivan is currently joined as our board member. We do have other volunteers that help with spreading awareness and running fundraisers and collecting donations. And honestly, our association was kind of not very active in terms, because the conflict was in a very low intensity phase, and then suddenly in 2014, in February of this year, when the war happened, people started reaching out to us with the offering help, asking how we can help. We were collecting without soliciting many donations, both in kind and in cash. So we started to be more active, and you can see on our website, which is utah-ukrainians.org, and you can see what we've done. We organized several rallies at the Utah Capitol, where local government representatives attended. We also ran a concert at the Cathedral of Magdalene. There was some good response there as well, and we are very impressed, honestly, with how people are active, how are they willing to help, and without waiting for being asked. This is truly amazing. Here are some pictures from the events that we have organized. This is pictures of these are pictures of some of the donations that we collected back in February. And some of the items that we collect include, we can split them on based on purposes into categories. One is more humanitarian for refugees, for civilian population, and other. We also work with volunteers on the ground that help the territorial defense organizations as well, and we collect military aid kits and air drones and radios and items of necessity for both civilians and territorial defense. This list you can actually visit our website and see what items are hot and needed. And also there are other ways to help, which you can also find on our website. And there are great organizations, Serhiy Prytula Foundation. Serhiy Prytula is also a comedian, as Ukraine's current president, and he also organized this foundation to help army and volunteers in territorial defense, as well as some other great ways to help, to donate to Come Back Alive, Army SOS, Hospitalers, Phoenix Wings, Ukrainian Women Veteran Movement, but Vostok SOS. And another great help, what people can do, just be interested in the topic. What is our fear is, that with time, it's, people with their problems, and it's understandable, become less active, less interesting. But this is really not just a Ukrainian problem. It's really a world problem, and people should be aware and spread awareness and try to find a solution that would to save civilians and help Ukraine. You're more than welcome to reach out directly to us. You see the email, our email here, and ask for any other ideas, or offer any other ideas, or offer your help. Thank you very much. That is my part, and I will give time to Ivan.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Kovalov. And we will give it to Ivan. We have just a few minutes left, but yes, please share about.
Yeah, I will try to do it as fast as possible, basically. Yeah, let me give it a try if it works now. Yeah, it should work now. Let me know when you can see it.
We can see it great.
Awesome. So Zhenya gave like really good presentation what we are. I would need probably more than a few minutes, but I will try to finish it in 5. So I would like to start. So basically my portion is basically explain what's going on right now in Ukraine. And I would like to start with a video that President Zelensky used maybe like a week ago to US countries, European countries, just to describe what's going on. And I'm going to use exact videos that he showed. And please, if it's going to be contain some pictures, graphic of war actions, and if you're sensitive to such kind of information, please feel free, I don't know, to turn around or maybe to not watch it. And basically it would take a little bit about 2 minutes. And especially if you have kids, please let them to maybe not to be right next to your monitor right now. So, and here we go. I'm going to start it.
We've lost your audio, Ivan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You didn't lose audio. I just wasn't able to speak.
I understand.
Yes, and basically, I watched this video before, and every time it's hard for me to see what's going on in my country right now. And I was born in Ukraine. I moved in Ukraine maybe 8 years ago, when everything started like in 2014. And basically, how this war, you know, and 24th of February, it's changed, and it's changed a lot. And I have my parents and my brother and my wife's parents. It's still in Kiev. And basically, my brother, he called me. I remember right now, it was like 23rd of February. It was evening time. I just put my kids to bed. And my brother called me, and I know it was like 5:38 a.m. in his time. And he lived in an apartment building that about 16 stores or 16 levels, and he lives on the 8th floor. And he called me and he said, it looks like it started. Everything's shaking. It's crazy. It's basically how I find out that war in my country started. And it's been a pretty hard time for all of us. Super heavy, super hard time, super tough time. And I know when Russian army came in, they said that, hey, we're just gonna demilitarize, just help Ukraine to get rid of military objects, because probably Ukraine doesn't need it. And basically that's how they were trying to find excuses why this war has started. But I want to show you something, guys. But this building looked like a military base. It's in Mariupol, by the way. Does this building look like military base to you? It's hard to imagine that like in 2022, someone just decide that, someone can decide and get inside someone's country so easily and start the invasion, how it started like in February 24, 2022. And what really breaks my heart that, they said they're saving lives. They're trying to save Russian culture, Russian world, or Russian speaking people, whatever. But I want to give you some example, guys. This happens in Mariupol. This is a really famous example of Russian war and how they're saving people. This is like a house of culture. And this house of culture, especially when I was like a kid, when I was like a teenager, I used to go in this, similar building, and we were having like stuff like art-related stuff like singing, dancing, just drawing, whatsoever. It's a place when you gather and you just try to develop and just talk with your friends. So it mostly developed for kids to have a concert and so on. And similar building was in Mariupol, of course. And because Mariupol infrastructure has been destroyed almost like to 90%. So people were trying to find cover when they can find the cover, when cover still exists. And basically this building, it's a cultural building. And as you can see over here, it clearly says deity, which means children. And it says with a big letter from the both sides of the building. You can see children here, and you can see children over there, because majority of who was in this building were kids, just little kids. And they made it on purpose, so people who are bombing the city, right, like Russian jet flights and so on, Russian military, so they can see it, and they would not do stuff that they plan to do. At least they can do whatever they want to do, try to find military base or so on. But please leave this building alone, because we have kids there. And you know what they did with the building? That's what they've done with this building. It still sees the deity notice, which means children, and it sees, oh, more than 300 people died, and lots of them are just kids. And from the beginning, Anyway. From the beginning of this action, more than like 140 kids died. And it's just kids. And what they've done, like, with other stuff. Anyway, it's really hard to talk.
Ivan, would it be better to move to questions and answers now?
Probably. Give me a moment. I gather myself together now. Yeah, I apologize, guys, but
No,
it's a
don't
sensitive
apologize.
topic, and that's how it is. It's a Kharkov city, how it used to be before February 24th. And it's like square of independence whatsoever. And that's how it looks now. That's how Russian war look like now. It's what they bring in. And you know what? Guess how many military bases we have in Kharkov? It's 0 bases. 0 bases. All they doing, it's they like Bulgarian or whatever. They like wild people. They just bombing the city. They getting inside. They stealing stuff out of it. They killing like Ukrainian people. And I believe it should not happen in 2022. And that's why, guys, I'm really asking you not to be detached. Because I know if Ukraine would fall, symbol of democracy would fall. And we need your help, guys, right now. I apologize for my tears. It's hard to hold it. More than like 3.5 million people flee from Ukraine because it's just impossible for there to feel safe in some places like Kharkiv, Mariupol, Kyiv, and so on. And anyway, I'm apologize. I'm trying to keep myself together. Just keep going on. But you really can understand me because you have those histories as well. You have like 9/11, right? You have Pearl Harbor as well. And just remember what you felt when it happened. It's what happened in my country every day. And apologize. And I'm moving to Yevgen. And thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. And please don't apologize. Not for this. It's heavy, but it's meant to be heavy. So thank you. And thank you so much for attending, for listening, and for hearing something that is truly important. That is why we are doing the Let's Be Neighbors series. It's to unite us and to help each other and realize that we are all neighbors, no matter what, and that we can do what we can to help. And so thank you. We will move to questions and answers now. We'll give it as much time as we can, so feel free to start if you have any questions that you feel are important that you want to know answers to. Start typing them in the chat. We have at least one to start with and a couple that were sent to me directly, and we can start with those, but we'll get to as many questions as we can. And so we will start with, oh, I lost his name. I'm so sorry. And okay, so the question was, why didn't the world react to Putin taking over Crimea? And this goes to, it's an open forum, so anyone who wants to answer our panelists, feel free to start. And then if you can turn on your screen so they can see you talking and we can engage that way, that would be wonderful. But yes, the Crimea situation, why didn't the world react then?
I can start if others don't mind. And Ivan, thank you so much for your presentation. And I'm also from Ukraine, and I really feel as I think it was very powerful. What you have shown, it was difficult to watch, but it's important to know the truth of what's like the extent of human suffering that is happening in our home country. So Crimea, 2014. The simple answer is the scale. So right now, what we are seeing today in Ukraine, the amount of devastation, this is the largest war on the territory of the European continent since World War II. So Ivan mentioned Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Imagine an attack on the United States that would force to flee every fourth resident of the United States, right? So in that sense, even though 9/11 was such a watershed moment, this is like 9/11, multiplied by 100, right? In terms of like how many people are affected by this war in Ukraine right now. So the scale of the Crimea annexation was completely peaceful. One person died. In addition, in my opinion, the greatest blunder that Russia committed at the time was not to conduct a free and fair referendum in Crimea. It is true that the population of Crimea was overwhelmingly pro-Russian. So they wouldn't have, if it was a free and fair referendum, it wouldn't have received, of course, 90% approval, which they received with their fake referendum, but they probably would be able to pull off a legitimate majority in favor of joining Russia. So it is, unfortunately, that is the state of Crimean public opinion in 2014. So the short answer is that it was very swift and it was bloodless. And if you saw some, and so the initial plan for this invasion, supposedly, it's remarkable to read about this, but we have indirect evidence that Russian soldiers had actually parade uniforms packed with them, and they were planning to hold parades in the southeastern part of Ukraine, which they were planning to occupy within 3 days. So if, in fact, they killed no civilians, the president of Ukraine just fled the country this time, and they were able to control most of Ukraine with no bloodshed in 3 days, I don't think you would have seen the same rallying around Ukraine throughout the world. So that's the difference, right? The amount of human suffering, the amount of migration that is caused by the crisis, and the amount of devastation unleashed.
Ivan, Kovalov, if you want to add anything to that, feel free, or we can move on to the next question.
I think it's a good question, but yeah, I think Ms. Pechenkina covered it. I would just add that there's a real fear of a nuclear weapon. One, and second is it seems like Russia was able to lobby the interest in Europe in the past several years significantly, and Europe was dependent on Russia, so they didn't want to be in confrontation, and kind of a frozen conflict worked well for Europe. That's my opinion.
Now, I would like to add something. Yeah, really. Yeah. So, Anna, I'm kind of would like to object to your opinion, because just something you didn't expose to everyone. But at the time when Russia invaded Crimea from Ukraine, we didn't have a legitimate presidency. Our president was flee away because he was corrupted. And especially when the revolution happened, we didn't have someone who was staying in the leadership of the country. And it was like really useful situation for Russia to make it happen, because Ukraine was corrupted at the moment, military people was corrupted, and president did not exist. So for Russia, we're just like, hey, let's just do it, because they're not gonna able even to measure military force against us. So it was a really good situation for Russia to attack it. But still, I don't believe someone can just involve in just neighbor country and say, you know what, I like it, it belongs to me. So let's just do like a fake referendum and make it happen. Even they would try to do it, I know it's in more ways how we can arrange it, right, from like perspective, but still, I don't believe that the way how Russia did it, it's legitimate way, because they just tried to do it when Ukraine was a really poor state and was no actual leadership. And that's how Russia managed doing it without any military opposite side, because it did not exist at the time. And so, for example, if you would have a legitimate president, as we have right now, it would be the same situation. It would be like military conflict. So that's why it would be just Russia catch the moment, as it usually does. It's just my personal opinion. And I was there. I was in Ukraine when it's actually happened. I was in Donetsk when it's actually happened. And I was really close to Crimea when it's actually happened. So I know what I'm talking about.
I'm not disputing anything you just said. My point was that it was strategically, I did not say that what they conducted was a legitimate referendum. In fact, I did use the words fake referendum. But I mean, from the viewpoint of Russia, what they should have done, they could have legitimized that annexation at the time. But the countries is just so kind of engaged with that authoritarian thinking that they didn't even bother conducting a free and fair referendum in Crimea. But in everything else, we agree, yeah.
Okay. So then we agree.
All right, thank you. So in regards to how to help, would it be better to donate specific items that will then be shipped over to Ukraine, or is it better to donate money that organizations in Europe can there purchase and then purchase to help refugees? What is the best use of resources to get the best help to people in Ukraine?
My personal experience, and probably our organizations too, is that the needs are changing. So cash donations, money donations are it's more liquid, right? We can react to the needs and use them for what is needed. But we're welcome to accept. People are welcome to donate items that most of the needed items are on the website. The difficulty with the items also is to find a way to deliver to Poland first, and it's maybe expensive, and then to Ukraine. What we do sometimes, we other organizations do too. They could buy on Poland or Amazon in Poland, or website online stores items that are needed and get it delivered to storage in Poland, and that's been picked up there and delivered to those who need the items. So I would say cash is probably the best, but we do have once in a while planes coming, or Ukrainian organizations get together and deliver stuff to Poland.
All right, thank you. See, make sure, okay, no new questions yet. So one that we could talk about is why won't other countries restrict airspace or provide air support, as that seems to be a key thing in many news updates about it. Like there's like it's one of the biggest things that Ukraine's asking for, but it's one of the things that's not being provided. Is there any insights as to why that's not happening?
Yeah, so the main reason is nuclear weapons. If Russia did not possess nuclear weapons, probably this would already be in place. But of course, nobody wants to escalate this conflict to a global war, right? So this could get out of control very, very quickly. So just a point of clarification, when people say close the sky, and of course, everyone advocating for Ukraine should absolutely make this demand. And when President Zelensky is making this request to US Congress, he's doing the right thing for Ukraine. Now, is it in the interest of the US Congress necessarily to engage in the act of war? Because closing the sky, what that means is that you have to use American missiles that are going to be located in Poland, and they would be shooting down Russian aircraft. Furthermore, most of the missiles that are being launched from Russian aircraft are being launched from even within Russian territory. So that would actually literally, if you truly want to prevent most of those missiles landing in Ukraine and targeting civilians, that literally means that the aircraft has to be shot down on before it even passes into the Ukrainian airspace to prevent most of those missiles. So you can see how that escalates to a global war very quickly. So that's the reason. Nuclear weapons, and nobody wants to mess and kind of risk the potential for nuclear warfare.
Yeah, basically. And if you would like to ask our opinion, I would like to say we have the same question. So why it's still not closed? That's it. Even saying so, yeah, I still think it should be at some point. It would help us a lot, but still.
Yeah, the realities of war, it's awful.
Yes.
Okay, let me review and make sure we haven't got any more questions. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So if anyone has any last minute questions, I'll review anything over here just to make sure. But if not, we'll just have closing statements. Like any thoughts that you have, just in summary, or we'll just say, yeah, this is a needed place where needed conflict where we can help. And so there's lots of ways to help, not only in our direct community of people that have family and friends that are there, but also just people that are directly being affected, individuals, children, women, men, civilians that are needing help. And so, yeah. So if there's any last thoughts you guys have, I will leave it to you in your court, and then we'll close for the evening.
I just want to say, Heather, that there is one question which probably that could potentially help someone. Would you please talk more about the petition for the refugee status? I don't know if you
right there. Yes, I missed that. Thank you. So yes, yeah, would you please talk more about the petition for refugee status?
Yes, so there's a disclaimer. I'm not the one that was responsible in our organization for that. But we did start the petition here in Utah. We did gather a sufficient number of signatures to go to the to be able to collect signatures online right now, and we're still doing it as long as we are. But as you may also know, President Biden recently allowed 100,000 refugees to come to the United States. We don't know how that will work yet, but at least there is a decision right now.
Yeah, and from perspective of our organization, I would like to add that we trying to be ready for it. So basically, we're trying to gather information on people who's willing to provide temporary protection in their houses. Also, we are gathering some, like we mentioned before, donations to actually help those people. Just because most of the people won't have anything with them, and people with kids, they're probably gonna have just a few luggages with kids' clothes, and basically that's it. So they won't have anything, and then probably would be there for some time, maybe for a year, maybe for a few. So we as an organization try to support those people, and we're gonna try to provide them like food, maybe like temporary employment if it would be like legal in this country, so as all necessary items as well, so as place where they can stay for, I don't know, for some amount of time as well. So we're trying to be ready for this, and yeah, it would be nice to have them and help, because we've been there as new people. We know how hard is that to start your life from the beginning, especially when you did not plan to do it. Basically, you start all over from again. You have nothing. You definitely need some support, and we will try to provide some support from our side.
All right, thank you. All right, heavy topic, but some of the most important ones need to be discussed, and that's why we are happy to have this forum here for that. And so thank you for being here to our panelists, and thank you for our participants for watching, for viewing, and for becoming engaged. And so We will have this recording available within a week, we hope, sooner if we can get all of our necessary balls rolling, but that way it's viewable so you can see all the resources again. And thank you again, and we hope to see you guys soon. Have a good evening, guys.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye.